The 27 Club is the name given to the unexplained phenomenon that has seen numerous high-profile artists and musicians all die at the age of 27 years old. This remarkable statistical spike really had entered the public consciousness in 1994 following the death of Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain and in then 2011 the death of Amy Winehouse. We look at the conspiracies surrounding their deaths. Kurt Cobain was found dead from a gunshot wound to the head at his Seattle home on 8 April 1994 despite police concluding the wound as being self-inflicted and the discovery of a suicide note addressed to Cobain's imaginary childhood friend Bada. The circumstances of his death have long been surrounded by speculation. In May 2021, 27 years after Kurt Cobain's death, the FBI released a previously unseen file that included letters from fans desperate for the agency to re-investigating their idol's death, believing him to be a victim of homicide. One fan noted there were no prints on the gun he supposedly shot himself with, and the fan also mentioned that in his suicide note he never mentioned nothing about wanting to take his own life except for the part of it that was in another handwriting style and appeared to be added at the end, and the final part analyzed by experts seemed to have been forged. Claims of foul play, and some believe his widow Courtney Love and Michael DeWitt, the male nanny who live at the Cobain's residence, both were supposedly involved in a conspiracy that resulted in the murder of Kurt Cobain. They were married, but there were claims he was looking at divorcing Courtney, but Courtney denied involvement in Cobain's death and has never been investigated or charged in any way.
Amy Winehouse. On the surface, her death on 23 July 2011 appeared to be a relatively simple but tragic case, with the inquest into her death determining she died by misadventure. According to the coroner's report, the singer's blood alcohol level was 5 times the legal drink-drive limit, which led to alcohol poisoning and respiratory arrest. It is also believed that her long life struggle with bulimia had escalated her risk of a fatality from alcohol abuse. Despite this, many people are convinced that the multiple Grammy Award-winning singer Amy Winehouse actually died from a drug cocktail overdose that was covered up. While we still never know for certain. This theory seems unlikely, since the star's Dr. Christina Romete testified during the second inquest that Amy had stopped using heroin and cocaine in 2009 but still had struggled with a problematic alcohol drinking problem.
Jimi Hendrix is widely regarded as one of the most influential electric guitarists ever, responsible for classic tracks such as Hey Joe and The Wind Cries Mary, but behind the scenes of his public success his life was chaotic. He was a regular user of drugs and in January 1968 was arrested after getting into a drug-induced fight while touring Sweden. The following year he was arrested again for drug possession after drugs were found in his luggage at Toronto Airport. Jimi Hendrix died on 18 September 1970 of asphyxia after taking 9 sleeping tablets, but despite his drug addiction many people believe his death was suspicious, and rumors about what really happened to Jimi before his death.
Rumors centered around Jimmy's girlfriend Monika Dananan. She was a German skater and the last person to see Jimmy alive. The pills he had taken were prescribed to Monika, and Jimmy was supposedly found hours before an ambulance was called. Monika's story is different, and Jimmy supposedly had a scarf tied around his neck.
Janis Joplin was a singer and songwriter. Her death was especially shocking to the world, and not only because it occurred just 16 days after Jimi Hendrix had died, but because she was such a controversial figure and how she had been found dead. Janis, on 4 October 1970, was found dead lying on the floor of the hotel she was staying in by her road manager John Cook. An autopsy concluded that she had died of a drug overdose, and her death was ruled as accidental. It was suggested that Janis had received a more potent strain of drugs than usual, as was indicated in the overdoses of several of her dealer's customers over the course of that same weekend, but what made the discovery of her body suspicious was that although alcohol was found in her room, there were no drugs found. Janis was a prolific drug taker and they were found to be in her system. Later, 2 theories had been looked at: either the dose she had taken had been tampered with then removed from her room to suggest accidental overdose, or someone close to her had removed the drugs believing it would help protect her reputation. Either way, her close friend Mercedes and her frequent lover Peggy Caserta don't believe the ruling and has always insisted that Janis didn't die of an accidental overdose and that Janis somehow had fell onto the hotel room's bedside table, breaking her nose, which could have led to asphyxiation and her eventual death. Brian Jones was the founder and original leader of the Rolling Stones, but after he developed a dependency on alcohol and drugs he quit the band in June 1969. Less than a month later, on 2 July, Brian was found dead in a swimming pool at his home. The coroner's report determined his passing as death by misadventure. Soon afterwards, theories surrounding his death began to circle. In 1993 it was claimed Brian had in fact been murdered in a fight over money by his builder Frank Thorogood, who was carrying out construction work on his property. Fans also claim that the killing of Brian was covered up by senior officers after the local police force had botched the original investigation. Frank had confessed on his deathbed to killing Brian after he had finally snapped. However, it was concluded the initial verdict was correct and no foul play had happened. It was just a rumor.